I slumped on the chair by the larder door. It was some time before I stammered, with difficulty, "Do what you like to me. I'm not moving from here. I've no intention of doing anything to you," the officer said. Then he asked me, "What do you do for a living?" "I'm a pianist." He looked at me more closely. Then his glance fell on the door to the other room. An idea seemed to have struck him. "Come with me, will you?" We went into the next room where a piano stood by the wall. The officer pointed to the instrument. "Play something." I looked inquiringly at him and did not move. He obviously sensed my fears, since he added reassuringly, "It's all right, you can play. If anyone comes, you can hide in the larder and I'll say it was me trying the instrument out." When I placed my fingers on the keyboard, they shook. I hadn't practiced for 2.5 years, my fingers were stiff and covered with a thick layer of dirt, and I had not cut my nails for some weeks. I played Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. When I finished, the silence seemed gloomy and eerie. I heard a shot down below outside the building, a harsh, loud German noise. The officer looked at me in silence. After a while he sighed, and muttered, "All the same, you shouldn't stay here. I'll take you out of the city, to a village. You'll be safer there." I shook my head. "I can't leave this place," I said firmly. Only now did he seem to understand my real reason for hiding among the ruins. "You are Jewish?" he asked. Yes. Well," he murmured, "in that case I see you really can't leave. Where are you hiding?" "In the attic." He inspected the attic and discovered something I had not yet noticed, a loft made of boards directly above the entrance to the attic. The officer said he thought I should hide in this loft. He asked if I had anything to eat. "No," I said. "Well, never mind," he added hastily, "I'll bring you some food." Only now did I venture a question of my own. "Are you German?" He almost shouted his answer in agitation, as if my question had been an insult. "Yes, I am. And ashamed of it, after everything that's been happening." Abruptly, he shook hands with me and left. 3 days passed before he reappeared. It was evening and pitch dark when I heard a whisper under my loft. "Hello, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here," I replied. Soon afterwards, something heavy landed beside me. Through the paper, I felt several loaves and something soft, which later turned out to be jam wrapped in grease-proof paper. I quickly put the package to one side and called, "Wait a moment." The voice in the dark sounded impatient. "What is it? Hurry up. The guards saw me come in here, and I mustn't stay long. Just hang on a few more weeks, the war will be over by spring at the latest." The voice fell silent. I did not know if the officer was still there, or if he had gone. But suddenly he spoke again. "You must hang on, do you hear?" His voice sounded harsh, almost as if he were giving an order, convincing me of his unyielding belief that the war would end well for us. Only then did I hear the quiet sound of the attic door closing. Monotonous, hopeless weeks passed by. I heard less and less artillery fire. There were days when not a single shot broke the silence. Soldiers went up and down the stairs, often bringing large packages up to the attic and fetching others down. But my hiding place was well chosen. No one ever thought of searching the loft. On the 12th of December, the officer came for the last time. He brought me a larger supply of bread than before in a warm eiderdown. He told me he was leaving Warsaw with his detachment, and I must on no account lose heart. "But how will I survive the street fighting?" I asked anxiously. "If you and I have survived this inferno for over 5 years, he replied, "it's obviously God's will for us to live." We had already said goodbye, and he was about to go, when an idea came to me at the last moment. I had long been racking my brains for some way of showing him my gratitude. "Listen." I took his hand and began speaking urgently. "I never told you my name, you didn't ask me, but I want you to remember it. Who knows what may happen? You have a long way to go home. If I survive, I'll certainly be working for Polish radio again. I was there before the war. If anything happens to you, if I can help you then in any way, remember my name, Szpilman, Polish radio." He smiled his usual smile, half shy and embarrassed, but I felt I had given him pleasure with my naive wish to help him. The first hard frosts came in the middle of December. Christmas came, and then the New Year 1945, the 6th Christmas and New Year celebrations of the war, and the worst I had known. I lay in the dark, listening to the stormy wind. I heard the squeaking and rustling of rats and mice running back and forth in the attic. In my mind, I went over every Christmas before and during the war. At first, I had a home, parents, 2 sisters and a brother. Then we had no home of our own anymore, but we were together. Later I was alone, but surrounded by other people. And now I was lonelier, I supposed, than anyone else in the world. I had to be alone, entirely alone, if I wanted to live. On the 14th of January, unusual noises in the building and the street outside woke me. Soldiers ran up and down the stairs, and I heard agitated, nervous voices. Early in the morning of the 15th of January, the sound of artillery from the previously silent front was heard. The ground and the walls of the building shook under the constant dull thunder. 3 hours later the heavy artillery fire died down again, but I was as nervous as ever. I did not sleep at all that night. The street fighting would begin at any moment, and I could be killed. The night passed peacefully. Around 1 o'clock I heard the remaining Germans leaving the building. Silence fell. I could not even hear the steps of the guards outside the building. Not until the early hours of the next day was the silence broken by a loud and resonant noise, the last sound I had expected. Radio loudspeakers set up somewhere nearby were broadcasting announcements in Polish of the defeat of Germany and the liberation of Warsaw. The Germans had withdrawn without a fight. As soon as it began to get light, I prepared feverishly for my first venture out. My officer had left me a German military overcoat to keep me from freezing. I had already put it on when I suddenly heard the rhythmic footsteps of guards out in the road again. Had the Soviet and Polish troops withdrawn, then? I sank on my mattress, utterly dejected, and lay there until something new came to my ears, the voices of women and children. At all costs, I had to get information. I ran downstairs, put my head out of the front door and looked out. It was a grey misty morning. To my left, not far away, stood a woman soldier in a uniform that was difficult to identify at this distance. A woman with a bundle on her back was approaching from my right. When she came closer, I ventured to speak to her. "Hello. Excuse me," I called in a muted voice, beckoning her over. She stared at me, dropped her bundle and took to her heels with a shriek of, "A German." Immediately the guard turned, saw me, aimed and fired her machine pistol. The bullets hit the wall, and without thinking, I rushed up the stairs and took refuge in the attic. Looking out of my little window a few minutes later, I saw that the whole building was surrounded. I heard soldiers calling to each other and then the sound of shots and exploding hand grenades. This time my situation was absurd. I was going to be shot by Polish soldiers in liberated Warsaw, on the very verge of freedom. Feverishly, I began to wonder how I could make them realize that I was Polish before they dispatched me to the next world as a German in hiding. I began coming down the stairs, shouting as loud as I could, "Don't shoot. I'm Polish." Very soon I heard swift footsteps climbing the stairs. The figure of a young officer in Polish uniform, with the eagle on his cap, came into view. He pointed a pistol at me and shouted, "Hands up." I repeated my cry of, "Don't shoot. I'm Polish." The lieutenant went red with fury. "Then why in God's name don't you come down?" he roared. "And what are you doing in the German coat?" Only when the soldiers had taken a closer look at me and reviewed the situation did they really believe I wasn't German. Then they decided to take me to their headquarters so that I could wash and have a meal. After 2 weeks, well cared for by the military, I walked through the streets of Warsaw without fear, a free man, for the first time in almost 6 years. I looked over to the north of the city, where the ghetto had been, where 500,000 Jews had been murdered. There was nothing left of it. Tomorrow I must begin a new life, with nothing but death behind me. I went on my way.